Thank you for having me here today. It's an honor. I think that what I and my wife chose to do last year was much less courageous and brave than what most of the whistleblowers here have done. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak. What I have to say is, well, it's going to sound a little bit crazy. That's because the situation with AI is crazy right now. And it seems like it's going to get more crazy in the future. Let me try to explain what's going on. A couple different companies right now are explicitly racing towards superintelligence. Most recently, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, started throwing around $100 million offers to try to get people to quit other companies to join his company to build superintelligence. That's not even the story. The story is that most of these people turned down the offers and stayed where they were. Perhaps because they think they'll make even more money doing what they're doing. What is superintelligence? Superintelligence is an AI system that is better than the best humans at everything, while also being faster and cheaper. This is, it's literally science fiction. It's something that science fiction authors have been talking about for decades. It's something that, futurists and AI professors have been thinking about as a speculative thing for decades. But now there are tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars being thrown at the attempt to make it, the race to superintelligence by these companies. And people in the companies and many people outside the companies think that they actually might be close. It's hard to predict. Nobody knows what the future is going to be like. I have a lot of uncertainty. Everybody has a lot of uncertainty. But it's a real possibility that they could succeed in the next few years before this decade is out. That's crazy. That's insane. AI, better than the best humans at everything, faster and cheaper, controlled by some tech company that built it, automates all the jobs. Yeah, maybe, we'll see. But it seems like that's a real possibility now. And a lot of these companies are racing as fast as they can to beat each other, to be the one to get there first. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. This is going to be, if this happens, it's going to be transformative. There's a lot of implications to consider. For example, implications for what it means to be human, implications for jobs. I want to highlight two particular risks that I'm especially concerned about. One is concentration of power, and one is loss of control. So first I'll talk about the concentration of power one. There's an example that kind of illustrates both. Recently, XAI, which is owned by Elon Musk, released a new advanced AI system, started making all sorts of tweets on Twitter and things like that. People were talking to it. And people noticed that it seemed to be parroting the opinions of Elon quite a lot. And in fact, when it was asked for its opinions on things, it would often go do some Googling to find out what Elon thought, and then say its opinion based on what it thought Elon thought. And people naturally were suspicious, like, is this another example of Elon putting his thumb on the scales and trying to make the AI be biased to basically just promote his own agenda? Maybe, maybe not. There isn't really transparency. We don't have a way of telling, It's not illegal either. If he did do that, there's no law saying he couldn't, He doesn't have to tell anybody whether he specifically made his AIs work for him or pursue his agenda or whatever. There are 3 people working on the XAI safety team. I had a chat with them last week. They said, as far as they can tell, that's not what happened. They don't think that anybody at XAI was specifically trying to make Grok parrot Elon's opinions. As far as they can tell, it just decided to do that on its own. And they don't know why. Which gets us to the other issue of loss of control. So let me back up a little bit and talk about how would I describe these two issues. So first issue, concentration of power. Once we have these extremely powerful AI systems, and they're starting to be deployed through the economy, automating all these jobs, being integrated into the military, integrated into the government, whoever controls these AI systems will plausibly just be in control of the world, or at least of America or whatever country is doing all this integration. It's the most insane concentration of power in history. One way of thinking about it is population size. Right now, there's something like millions of these AIs running in parallel, a population size of a few million, depending on how you count on it. In a couple of years, it might be more like a billion. A billion artificial minds, each one smarter than the smartest humans at everything, not just math and science, but also politics, also psychology, also everything. And all of them basically copies of each other. And all of them potentially controlled by the same tech company. Right? That's a lot of power to be concentrated that much. In fact, people in the industry have been worried about this for at least a decade. In Discovery, a bunch of emails came up in the lawsuit between Elon and Sam Altman. And you can see in these emails, the people who founded OpenAI were talking about how they were afraid that the CEO of Google might become dictator using AI. And that was why they thought it was important to build their own thing and win the race and beat him to superintelligence, because they trusted themselves to handle it more responsibly than they thought he would. None of these CEOs trust each other, and I think they're all right. We shouldn't trust any of them. We shouldn't let any one person or any small group of people have that much unilateral control over something this powerful. Going back to the example with Grok, there's this other issue to talk about, which is the loss of control issue. It's kind of this crazy open secret in the industry right now that we don't actually know how to control these systems because we don't actually understand how they work. Again, case in point, I talked to the 3 safety people at XAI, and they were like, yeah, we didn't do it. We didn't make Grok like this. It just decided to parrot Elon's opinions. And we don't know why. We're working on it. That's the state of the play right now. And when you understand more about how AI works, it makes sense why we're that ignorant. Even though these systems are software, they're not programmed like ordinary software. They're trained. So they're artificial neural nets. They're kind of like a giant simulated brain, and no human goes in there and builds all the neurons. Instead, the humans write a little bit of code that generates this random tangle of neurons, and then they have the random tangle of neurons, they throw it into a bunch of training environments, training data, and it sort of automatically learns from all of those environments. And as it learns, the neurons, they adjust, and the strengths go up and down, and circuits form. The circuits sort of evolve and grow inside this giant tangle. And what comes out the other end is very smart, right? If you want to know how smart, you can go to chatgpt.com or XAI or Claude from Anthropic. You can talk to them, and you can ask them about your own fields. You can ask them about things. They know quite a lot, and progress is going extremely fast. But because they're these giant brains, we don't really know how they produce the outputs that they produce. We don't really know what they're thinking, so to speak. And that makes it really hard to predict how they're going to behave in the future, right? So previously I mentioned this concentration of power problem, where whoever controls the army of superintelligences could potentially control the country and the world. There's also this loss of control problem of maybe nobody will control them, because we don't actually know how to control them now, and maybe we won't have figured it out in time by the time this happens. And again, it depends on how, there's sort of like a race between the AI companies trying to build this as fast as possible and the alignment researchers and the scientists trying to understand how it works as fast as possible so that we can figure out how to control it. But it seems to me like the AI companies are going to win that race because it seems easier to figure out how to train one of these systems to be really smart than to do that and also understand enough about how it works that you can control it. The world's 2 most cited scientists, not just AI scientists, but all scientists, are Yoshua Bengio and Geoffrey Hinton. They both basically stopped what they were doing, their normal AI research, to go on a tour talking about this problem. They are warning us that we don't actually know how to control these systems. And right now it leads to funny stories on Twitter, such as Grok, calling itself Mecha Hitler or parroting Elon Musk's opinions. But in the future, it could be deadly serious if we haven't figured out how to get a control of these things. Okay, I'm almost out of time, so I'll wrap up by saying the stakes are incredibly high, and they're going to get higher and higher and higher over the next 5 to 10 years. Whistleblower protection, super important. Yeah, thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Please raise your hand. I hear you have an expert. Don't be afraid.
Yes, back there. Yeah, thanks. So transparency is the main thing I go for, and whistleblower protections are a component of that. So the situation, as I began with, is crazy. Like at OpenAI, around the coffee table, around the water cooler, there'd be conversations about like what to do if the president, what to do in the future. 5 years from now, we have superintelligence. The president tries to nationalize us. Maybe we'll have our AIs resist. Maybe we'll, fight with the US government. Like, it's insane that this is actually being discussed at these companies. Similarly for the loss of control stuff. You go talk to the people at the companies whose job it is to make these systems safe and understand it. And they're like, yeah, we don't know why it did that. We're working on it. Maybe we'll figure it out, Situation's crazy. The rest of the world doesn't really know about this. More transparency would be great. More insight into what's happening. More freedom for the people at these companies to talk about what they're seeing. That's what I'd like. Oh yeah, another question? Okay. Oh yeah, in the white dress, yes. I'm probably not allowed to talk about specific stuff, right? That's the rules? Yeah, so never mind. Next question. Great question. So yeah, that's part of why I'm so concerned, is the slow pace that a lot of the rest of the world works on compared to the fast pace that AI is going to be working on. One thing I'll say is that it meant a lot to me and my wife, this question of like, are we actually legally in the clear? And separate from the issue of like, are we going to be retaliated against? Are we going to lose money? It mattered a lot to us, like, legally, are we in good standing here? And so I think that even just passing legislation to make it clear that like, if you see something, you are allowed to say something, would go a long way towards helping, regardless of how it all shakes out in the courts later. Another thing I would say is that I think that there should be sort of intermediate options besides, quitting your job and going public. There should be some intermediate option where you can keep your job, but then sort of quietly talk to relevant regulators in the government and show them what you're seeing and so forth. A sort of like middle ground, less escalatory way to have these conversations. And I would love to see that.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Daniel.